Hello everyone, this is Mahadeva the OG Thunder Wizard. Alright, so you've all been wondering when am I going to stop talking about politics? Hopefully starting now. But believe it or not, it's connected. I won't get into a whole lot of details, but we're going to talk about how you have the ability that you don't know that you have to completely, totally alter and change everything you can imagine. You have within your physical body, you have within you a nuclear powered, I don't even know, tesseract. I don't know what thing I want to call it, but it is the most powerful thing in the universe. And it's right smack dab in here, inside your heart center. In fact, it is so powerful that if this infinite source of power were to become directly directly in contact with anything in three-dimensional reality, it would destroy it. Because limitation, illusion of any kind cannot exist in the same space as this very powerful energy. If you know how to manipulate the energy meridians of the body, and if you know how to connect that to this infinite power source in your heart center, connect it to your intent, which is not your intellect, to your true intent. If you're able to do that without impediments, there is no limit to what you can accomplish, what you can experience, what you can achieve. There's only one thing stopping you. So I'd like for you to try and fill in that blank. What do you think the one thing is that might be stopping you from accessing without limitation this power in your heart? Think about it for a second. You don't have to tell me, just think about it to yourself. There's only one thing stopping you from having complete control over all of space-time, three-dimensional reality. That one thing is not your doubt. It is not your belief. It's none of that, none of the things that involve your intellect. It doesn't even have to do with your past or your karma. It has to do with your ability to not have anything blocking you between you and your most authentic self, which is that energy in the middle of your heart. So what is it that stops that? It is the things that you are emotionally attached to. And even right now, you think you know what I'm talking about and you don't. It is the things that you are emotionally attached to, that you have unfinished business within your own heart chakra. These are the gates that you will not ever get past. And the only way to get past them is to become conscious of them. So before we can get complete access to the infinity within your heart, we must first be able to become conscious. And now, bear in mind that when you become conscious of these attachments, it will feel like you are dying. It will feel like that though you won't be able to tell the difference between that which you think is keeping you alive and that which is your infinite source of everything. Everything you think about God, experiencing God, whatever that means to you. Imagine going and being in the presence of God, whatever word you use. Odin, Thor, Krishna, I don't care what word you use. Now imagine something that is even infinitely more powerful than that being. That is right here. It's an infinitesimally small point in your heart. I'm going to talk to you about what you can do to gain direct access to that. Now, before we do, I've got a cute little thing here to show. Now, last time I did this, I ended up, the stream got blocked. So if that happens again, just stay on and I'll come back on and we'll keep talking. But I've got this cute little thing for us to watch here.
We harness energy drawn from other dimensions of the multiverse to cast spells, to conjure shields and weapons, to make magic. senses.
All right, so are you ready? Can you handle the transformation? You know, I've been doing this kind of work for most of my adult life. I've had access to so many different styles of esoteric, powerful spirituality, energy magic. I mean, you just, I got tired of putting all the links up here. There's so much stuff that I teach, and I've looked at it from all different sides. And each one of those ways is a different doorway into this power of infinity. And this ability to absolutely master and create reality. There are so many people, I run into them all the time. You're watching me right now. There are so many people that want to experience another reality. They want to travel outside the body. They want to do shamanic journeying. They want to be able to do meditative journeys. They want to actually leave this world. But imagine, as you were watching that little clip in there, imagine that you were sent off to some other distant dimension. And when you got there, you hit your head and you forgot that you were in another dimension. And imagine in that dimension you had brought with you a map and a bunch of keys to know how you could go through that dimension and gain power and gain knowledge and eventually learn to master that. But you forgot, you hit your head. And so you don't know what you're doing. Now you're controlled by the laws of that dimension. But you went there with the intention of controlling it because you knew, somebody taught you how the dimension works and what you need to do, the tools that you have, and you have the tools on your person. You have like a tool belt, and you have things in your pockets, and you have all kinds of stuff that if you just grab this and press that and focus that, you can get this dimension to do whatever you want. But you forgot, you hit your head. You walk around with all this stuff and you don't know how to use it. You don't even know that it's there. That's what it's like to be a human. You are already on a spiritual journey. You are already in an alternate dimension. You are already in a dream state. You don't need to manufacture another one. The power of infinity is inside your heart. And that is nothing other than your own soul. Your soul is pure, infinite light. If you've ever talked to somebody, or if you yourself have had a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience, then you've seen that light. You hear about it all the time. As soon as people die, at some point, they're pulled towards this doorway, and in the doorway is this bright light that they're pulled into. And if they make it to the bright light, they will say, and everybody says the same thing, they say that it's much brighter than anything that you could see with your physical eyes. I've seen that. I saw that when I was 7. I left my body a couple of times. For some reason in that year when I was 7, I had multiple experiences. But I went to that light. And in my little 7-year-old brain, the way that I talked about it afterwards was, if I were to look at that light with my human eyes, they'd melt out of my sockets. The intense bliss that I felt was so intense, it was frightening. It felt like you were exploding from the inside with bliss. Just the most intense orgasmic explosion of bliss. This is right here in the center of your chest. It's an infinitesimal point of light. And that infinitesimal point of light, which is 1 billion times stronger than God. What you think of God, it's 1 billion times stronger than that. Infinitely stronger than whatever concept of God you can think of. And that infinitesimal point of infinite orgasmic, ultra bright light that sits in your heart center chose to have this spiritual experience. It lives in infinity, in timeless infinity. and it wanted to have a three-dimensional limited experience for the same reason that you want to enjoy virtual reality games, for the same reason that you want to play video games. Exact same reason. Wanted to have a spiritual experience. There's nothing more spiritual than you can experience than being a human. Now, how many of you, having listened to me explain this, identify with it? How many of you came onto this video hoping that I would tell you how you could escape? How many of you don't like what I'm saying because you feel that you're trapped and you can't access this? The stuff I'm talking to you about is you've never experienced it, you don't see it. You live in this horrible world full of horrible people. I mean, nowadays we live in a world where people don't even know what the truth is. More than ever. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know that it's ever been like this in the history of the human race, where people literally do not know what the truth is. They don't know who to believe. They can't differentiate between online experience with real life experience. So, what is it that you can do to access this infinite power within yourself? Well, this is where people like me come in. And this is something that has become relevant to me, especially just recently in the past few months. I've had some awareness of this, but I wanted to understand the esoteric sorcery practice, magical practice that I was taught, that I haven't seen equaled anywhere. I've tried it. They're different flavors of stuff. But in terms of raw power, I've never experienced anything like it. And I wanted to know what made this different. Nobody could explain it to me. So I went into meditation and I asked one of the beings out there, and I said, explain to me what is different about this. Why is it secret? Why is it more powerful than anything I've experienced? Why is it that nobody, when they talk about how energy works, doesn't talk about it in the same way that I do and doesn't explain it? When I share this with people who are masters in other energetic arts, they say, I've never experienced anything like this in my life. In fact, it frightens them to such a degree that they say, I can't do this, and they walk away. So I have found out that that information has been shared with me, and it has everything to do with the meat sack that you walk around in. So all of you wanting to escape your meat sack so that you can experience the truth. Those of you who think that you are trapped in this thick veil of illusion and you want to break through that so you can get to truth. You don't understand the power that the suit that you're walking around in. The suit that you're walking around in is like an Iron Man, from the comics. It's like an Iron Man suit. That's where you gain your power. In three-dimensional reality, your true essence wouldn't be able to be here. You wouldn't be able to, as a pure soul, be able to walk around and interface. You wouldn't be able to do it. You would destroy it. You would burn holes in everything, everywhere you went. And you'd also, you're already in multiple dimensions, and you're there's no, you're in multiple timelines. There's no, time doesn't hold you back, so you wouldn't be able to interface with any of this. So the thing to do is to siphon that infinite power, not from something out there, but to siphon it from inside of you. And there are pathways in your body that lead directly to this. And if you do specific exercises, then you can release that. I mean, I played that clip earlier. Again, hopefully I won't get blocked for doing it. But I played that clip earlier because that, even though that's a fantasy, I mean, I went saw the movie. The guy who directed that movie, by the way, The guy who directed that movie is a friend of mine, and we acted together in college. And when he went to film school, I did a bunch of his graduate student films that he went off and used to get into Hollywood, and then he forgot all about me. So, but he knew that I practiced this, and so one of the reasons that I like watching that is because I like to think that he thought of me when he was choreographing all of that as the director of this movie. Anyway, I got distracted in my own narcissism there for a moment. So there are meridians within your body, energy pathways. You all know about chakras. You've heard about those. I'm not talking about that, even though I put the word chakra in the title to clickbait you into this video. There are things called meridians, energy meridians. It's when you go and see a traditional Chinese medicine and they put needles in different part there, they're using that to put energy into your meridians. And specifically, the ones that we want have to do with the pericardium meridian. You can't see it, but my cursor is highlighting the pericardium meridian. Pericardium meridian and the triple warmer meridian. If you are able to know how to tap into those meridians and how to switch them on and manipulate them, you can gain access to that infinite energy in the heart. Now, imagine, as I said, there's like this infinitesimally small but infinitely bright point of light, which is you. And that is in your body. So your body is three-dimensional. So as I said, this thing won't survive. I mean, the three dimensions won't survive if it has direct contact to this infinite beam of light that is you. So it has to be contained safely, because it's a nuclear weapon. If it were let loose, you would, like I said, you'd blow holes in the sides of three-dimensional reality. Have you ever wondered why, when people pass away, the only way that you can interact with them is through some strange sign? They give you some strange sign, or they flick the lights on and off, or they might, talk through a medium. But, very rarely do you see them, appear in front of you and sit down at the table and start talking to you. Because they're no longer in that container that allows them to move. Plus, they're in multiple dimensions. So it's like, us trying to deal with somebody in two dimensions. We can pass through their dimension, but they won't ever see us. They'll just see this. They won't even know what it is. We'll be able to manipulate things in and around them so that they can maybe get some idea that something's going on, but they won't be able to actually see us or experience us or hear us. This is what happens when people die. This is why we do all of these things in order to experience gods. When we worship deities, we do things like we give offerings, we play music. Drum music specifically can be extremely powerful, open up portals. Chanting mantras can open up portals. But physical movement can also open up portals if you know how to manipulate all of the meridians here, all of this stuff. So that infinitesimal point of light that is infinitely powerful and is not bound by space or time, it has to be held in a container that will keep it from destroying everything around it. So this is what's called the pericardium meridian. It sounds like the actual physical pericardium, which is something else, but it means that which surrounds the heart. Pericardium. Cardium is heart. Para means around. And that pericardium meridian uses the power of lightning. So if there's an element associated with that, it would be fire, technically, but it's feminine. And the expression of that feminine fire is lightning. So imagine that little point of light being held in stasis by all this lightning, flashing around inside of it. And then you got the pericardium that holds it all together. The amount of power that's in there is unbelievable. If it were just like a nuclear bomb, if it were let loose on the earth, it could do unimaginable damage. So the people that were given the knowledge of this were told to keep it secret. And when I started learning this stuff, this was 30 years ago. Was it that long ago? It was 30 years ago. It was 30 years ago. And I was told never to mention it in public, never to tell anybody about it. Especially don't tell Chinese people about it. So I was telling my friend about it, and we were out at a Chinese restaurant. And he said, "What's the name of your sect?" And I told him, called Mao Shan. And he said, and I said, "But don't tell anybody, because if I go around and he says, well, why don't you ask the Chinese waiter over there?" And I said, no. And he said, "What's the name of it again?" And I said, Mao Shan. So he calls the waiter over and he says, "Hey, I heard of this guy who says he practices this thing called Mao Shan. Have you ever heard anything like that?" And the guy says, "No." And he goes off into the kitchen. And then you hear this, people yelling at each other in Chinese and the word Mao Shan coming out every 10 seconds. And then the guy comes back out and he says, "Okay, so here's what it is. It's like," and he starts describing voodoo. You take dolls of people, you stick pins in it, people look in the water and they see their future, and you can do all these things to them and you can control them, and they call up demons and spirits, and you have to stay away from those people. They're evil." And I said, "See, I told you. You're not supposed to talk about it like that." And while there are people who choose to use that name for those kinds of low-level nonsense black magic stuff, there was a real power. And the power of it was to be able to unlock this power that surrounds the heart, and to be able to channel that through your body. Now, here's what happens when you do it. When you do these exercises, when you do these things that tap into that and open it up, you get, if you do it right, you get a rush of tremendous power that flows through you. You get a feeling of invincibility. It's the power of lightning. But it's associated with the heart. So there's a strong connection to emotions. So this is why, you have that Star Wars movie with the Sith Lords. Sith Lords are all about negative emotions, because that represents what happens if you open this container up and you tap into that. Then if you are not conscious of all of the wounds that your heart carries around it, if you're not conscious of those, then those wounds become activated. And then people confuse the wounds with power. And then the power destroys you. So what needs to happen in order to understand how to create different realities is to understand that you're doing it anyway. I won't get into the specifics, but look at what just happened politically in the United States. It was almost utter complete civil war. It was almost a complete change of power structure. It was the kind of stuff you read about. We almost had that. We almost had a complete shift where everything was overturned. There were people ready to wipe out whole chunks of people. It was one of those typical things you hear about in, overthrowing of a government. We came this close to it. And that is a result of not knowing the difference between the wounds that people carry in that layer of energy that surrounds the heart and the reality that they live in. In fact, that is what creates your reality. It's not your intention. It's not your thoughts. It's not even your feelings. It is the conclusions and the assumptions that you hold in the areas of wound that you have within you. In order to be wounded emotionally, psychologically, in order to be wounded, you have to be holding on to a version of reality that is not consistent with the reality that you live in. We could call it insanity. But this is, if people were able to become conscious of the wounds that they're carrying around in that container that holds the lightning and the soul in the middle, if people were able to be conscious of that, they would then be able to be sane. And sane is nothing more than knowing what reality is, what true reality is. But you can create a reality. We can call it a false reality if you want, but it's still a reality. You can create a reality based on the beliefs and the assumptions that these wounds carry with them. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about, I may be overcomplicating it here, but you've got this energy layer surrounding your heart, right? Protecting the external world from this infinite power within you, which is your soul. In order to keep that in there, there's this lightning power that's bouncing back and forth, keeping your soul, in its protected state. The soul is very sensitive. It's very powerful, but it's also very sensitive. It's very vulnerable. Now, in infinity, when the soul is outside of the body in infinity, the soul is in bliss, and it is completely vulnerable. It hides nothing. There's nothing to hide from any other soul. There's no such thing as hatred or warfare or not liking somebody or judgment. That doesn't exist in infinity, because those are things associated with three-dimensional limited space-time. We have to make judgments in order to live. And that passes over into the emotional and psychological realm, where we start making judgments about people in order to survive. So, in order to protect the soul from all of that, we've got this energy layer around the heart, which protects it from attack. Whether that's emotional attack, or whether that's physical attack, or whether that's spiritual, psychological, anything that hurts your heart. Little kids, listen to little kids, because they'll say that. They'll say, "That hurt my heart." And it sounds like they're being really philosophical and poetic, but they're not. They're being serious. It's that they're saying that I felt that here in my heart, and that hurt. And that's because when we do things that are harmful to other people, based on our own narcissism, our own selfishness, our own need to try and protect ourselves, when we do things when we betray people, when we lie to them, when we cheat them, when we take advantage of them, when we control them, those kinds of things, the things that hurt you in personal relationships. And some people have gone through horrific wounds. What ends up happening is that this energy center, which has all this lightning bouncing around protecting the soul, it, like a turtle shell, it'll take whatever damage is coming at the soul, and it gets lodged there. And then you come up with all kinds of psychological things to protect yourself. As a little kid, in order to survive, you had to learn how to please your parents. You had to learn how to fit in. You had to deal with people not seeing you, not loving you, not understanding you. You had to learn how to deal with all of that, and you came up with strategies. This is, by the way, all that mental illness is. Mental illness is just a really intense, convoluted strategy that somebody has made under really stressful, traumatic experiences in order to survive. And it surrounds the heart. So imagine that heart energy that's protecting the soul. Imagine it's pockmarked with all of these energetic wounds that are still there. They're still there in that layer. And your job is to work through that and to become conscious of it. If you don't become conscious of it, then it could end up damaging you. But what it ends up doing is it creates in you an assumption and perception of reality that is not necessarily objectively true. And then you become more attached to the false reality that you begin to create from your heart center. And you do it in order to survive. So this is what psychology is all about. This is what spirituality and meditation is all about. When people talk about becoming conscious, it's not becoming woke. People talk about becoming woke, or I had my spiritual awakening. And what they mean much of the time when they say that is, I see what's going on out there. I see what those people are doing. I've been lied to by this and that. People who talk about conspiracy theories will talk about a spiritual awakening they had, which opened their eyes to all the lies that people are doing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about becoming aware of your desires, what you want from other people, what you want from the world, and how we all do it. We hide our most vulnerable feelings behind politics, religion, philosophy, money, status. Those are the things that we use as a shield to hide our vulnerable desires. And this is why the first thing I teach you when you go up here and you start working with me at whatever level, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you you have to drop every single victim mentality belief. Now, here's the hard part. When I talked about it, can you survive the transformation? It's not a mental transformation. It's an emotional transformation. You must be willing to feel your most vulnerable feelings without trying to protect them. What's the difference between somebody walks up to you, let's say it's somebody that you know, all right? Let's take a hypothetical person, we'll call her Jane, and one of her best friends, Mary, walks up to her, and they've been friends for a long time, and Mary walks up to her and says something really hurtful. I slept with your boyfriend last night. I've been wanting to do it this whole time because you beat me in that, whatever it is. You beat me at tennis, and I've been waiting to get back to you, and I finally did. I slept with your boyfriend. So she was open and vulnerable to her friend, and she got really hurt and betrayed. And then as a result of that, she goes on a rampage and slices Mary's tires and breaks her windows. What's the difference between that and, let's say, Charlotte, another girl, and the same thing happens to her? Penelope comes up to Charlotte and does the same thing, and Charlotte says, wow, I can't believe that you did that. That's so incredibly hurtful to me. I'm so devastated. But more than that, I'm sad for you. How sad that you would do that to somebody. You must be in horrific pain. And I can't have anything more to do with you. What's the difference between those two people? One of them does the normal, understandable human thing and goes to protect that wound and hides their vulnerable feelings behind it through rage and anger and getting even. And the other one is completely open and vulnerable and honest throughout the whole thing. It says, that's really painful to me, that you hurt me more deeply than I could have imagined, but you must be in a lot of pain. Not without any judgments, like I really feel for you and I wish that I could help you, but obviously I can't. The difference is that one of them has the power to stay within their vulnerable feelings. And then who ends up becoming the most powerful one? I mean, you see it in the movie Gandhi. Gandhi shows that all the time. He walks up and takes blows on the head, and it's just when people see that they're beating up somebody that's not fighting them, it kind of destroys something in them. A lot of times, not every time, certainly. But that's a representation of somebody who's operating from the heart center that way. So the assumptions that we make about how we interface with the universe will determine your ability to control this infinite energy. The reason I made all of these politics videos, so many, I don't know how many subscribers I've lost. There's no shortage of people that are on, that don't like what I've said politically. They love Trump or whatever, and they got really upset and they had to unsubscribe. But there's other people that have just been saying, can you please just stop talking about politics? I can't handle it. I can't handle it. And the reason why I did was because we almost had a complete shift in our reality based on people's assumptions of what reality was. More importantly, based on their assumptions of how reality interfaces with them. If you have the belief that you are a victim, if you have the belief that you are some tiny being in a big universe, and that there are beings and energies out there that have power over you, then eventually, if you stay in that, eventually you're going to create an alternate reality that doesn't serve you. It's going to be a hell. What do you think hell is? Hell in the sense of eternal torment. It is think about the underworld, right? When you go to the underworld, there are places in the underworld, according to my ancestral beliefs, where there's happiness and that there's partying and there's feasting, and then there's places of torment and torture. What do you think creates that? It's not that there's a being over there that says, I'm going to torture you and I'm going to give you a party. It's that people bring with them in the underworld. They bring with them whatever assumptions they're carrying. And if you carry with yourself an assumption that they're doing it to you, then guess what's going to happen in the underworld? You're going to start to create this bubble of perception that surrounds you where they're doing it to you. You can spend millions of years in there being hurt, manipulated, and abused. So if you want power, you've got to drop that. Because that energy that surrounds the heart, that protective energy, that protective feminine energy that surrounds the heart, that is powered by lightning inside. The only way that you're going to end up getting inside to that lightning and channeling it out in a healthy way is to become aware of your feelings. Meaning, who hurt you when you were a little kid? What you wanted out of life, the things you never got. I mentioned my friend who directed that movie, but that was a big sore spot for me. In my mind, I made that guy's career. I can remember hearing him say, yeah, I took our film that we made and your performance was so amazing. And because of your performance, I now have, and I remember him getting movie after movie and, he just disappeared, forgot about me. It just really hurt me badly. And I had to get honest. And the honest feeling was that I had a lot of ambition. And I blamed him because I didn't become the next big movie star. And he didn't do anything. It's not his fault. I came to find out that as a director, he didn't have any choice over who got cast in the movies. In fact, he had me come on and work with the casting directors, and I got little tiny parts here and there. Security guard number 2 or something like that. And he said, that's the best I could do. I have no power. I don't make any of the decisions. And instead of being happy for his success, and instead of being proud of having invested and done the work to help him catapult his career, I was focused on my selfishness. But if you hold on to that, if I had held on to that, then that would have potentially created an assumption within me that, you can't trust people. You can't help them out because they're just going to use you and toss you aside. You did Hollywood this, and then the man that, and the elites that. And before you know it, I'm talking about how the elites don't let people with really talent get anywhere because I'm too threatening to them. That would have been my assumption. You have to be free of all of that. And you have to have the assumption that you are infinite, that you create everything. That little piece inside of you has created everything you see, touch, feel, and experience. And you must have the assumption that the universe bows down before you, as though you are God, that God himself bows down before you. Remember what I said? Whatever you can think of being God, that light inside of you is 1 billion times stronger than whatever you think God is. If you think God created this universe, he did so at your instructions. And when you operate from that assumption, everything must serve you. Now, you may get confused as to what that's going to look like. You may think that means being president of the United States and having big giant yachts and mansions, and you may think that's what it is, but that's not what your soul wants at all. Your soul doesn't have any idea what the hell that is. So you have to know what your soul wants. But it's going to be hard to know that if you don't know what the false assumptions are that you have based on your wounds. So, this is, as I said, this is what psychology is all about. This is what a lot of spiritual mentoring is all about, what life coaches are about. This is what Zen meditation is about. But there's a way to go at it much more quickly. Everybody has a different carrot that they put in front of them. I'm all about power. I want power. Give me energetic power. So that's why I do what I do. I do physical meditations and movements and qigong and mantras and working with the directions and all that, because I want to tap into the power of the universe and the power within myself. But in order to do that, you fast track it. What's going to happen is those wounds in your heart, those wounds, when you stimulate the energy and it goes to that protective, feminine, fire, lightning energy that surrounds the soul, when you start to stimulate that and then channel that energy, it's like you're tapping into that nuclear powered energy in the center of your heart, and it starts coming out your hands, and it starts going into your brain, and it starts going into your physical reality, and you start being able to do things with physical reality, then those things that are lodged in that protective sphere of the heart that protect you, that you have created these false assumptions about why, who did this and who did that, and the judgments and everything surrounding it, that's going to get released. And you're going to have to feel it. You're going to have to feel the sadness. You're going to have to feel the anger, the rage. If you haven't felt rage your whole life, you won't know what to do with it when it comes out of you. There's on my other channel, there's a thing that is talked about a lot, which is, let me see, I don't want to waste a bunch of your time with all that nonsense, but People who have grown up in abusive homes, like they have been shamed out of having their feelings. People who are really codependent. If you know what, some types of codependence are, some codependents run around making everybody happy, pleasing everybody. Their job is to make people feel good. And they don't have any value unless they're running around making everybody happy and making sure everybody loves them. And that's a form of codependence based on a childhood where you weren't loved for who you were loved for what you did, and you had abusive, angry people that you had to make sure you kept placated all the time, or they might blow up on you. And you go up into adulthood, and you do that everywhere you go. Your entire life is based on that, and what people don't realize is that those people that are constantly running around making everybody feel good, they have inside of them this ball of rage that has never been tapped into. And that rage grows and grows and grows. In fact, every time that they go and do something nice for somebody and they try and be love and light, and that the rage in them grows and grows and grows, and then they will explode. Either that, or they end up killing themselves with things like breast cancer and all kinds of other things. The rage grows and grows and grows until it either implodes or explodes. And it's simply because they don't give themselves the right to have their anger, to have their feelings, to have their rage. So you might tap into this, and what comes out is the rage. You might tap into it, and what comes out is the sadness. What comes out is the hurt, the joy. Maybe you've been keeping yourself from joy all this whole time. But the emotions are going to have to be dealt with, and you're going to have to become conscious of your desires that are associated with it. People walk around loving everybody unconditionally and making everybody happy. What they tell you is, I'm here for you, I'm very spiritual, and I just love everybody unconditionally. What they're not telling you is that I'm deeply sad and alone, and I desperately want your love. I'm giving you this gift so that you'll be happy and then you'll love me. What I want more than anything is to be loved. But they don't tell you that. They say, I'm just here to be of service and to help. And then, one of their favorite mantras is, they say, I don't ask for much, and then you know it's going to come. You didn't say thank you for the plate of cookies that they've been giving you for the past 20 years. I've been giving you cookies every day for 20 years, and you've never once thanked me. I said, yeah, I did, but you said don't worry about it. I'm just doing it to make you happy. It makes me happy to give you cookies, so I stopped thanking you. So they're not being honest about what they want. You've got to be honest about the vulnerable desires that you have. You have to die to yourself. What do you think happened when Odin died to himself? He sacrificed himself to himself. Wasn't that he denied all of his desires and wants, it's that he became aware of them. And then when you become aware of them, then you can decide to discard them or follow through on them. What I teach is that your desire of your soul is the most important thing. It is the one commandment you must follow, which is to give your soul its deepest desires. So that's what we're doing here, this 90-day challenge. We are, you can talk to people who have gone through it. We've got to level 2 now. People are working with the 5 elements. You think you know what the 5 elements are? But the 5 elements, among other things, is concerned with the 5 energetic reactions to life, which you would call emotions. These are strategies energetically when you react to things. So we seek to balance those elements, and we seek to release blocked energy, blocked emotions, like people have been walking around with rage their whole life and aren't aware of it. Or emotions that haven't gotten enough. You haven't gotten enough love. You haven't gotten enough support. So you don't believe that the universe is there to take care of you. So the water element is going to be weak. You're going to have lower back pain. Why do you think people go like this when they talk about money? I've got to pay bills. Why do you think they put their hands right over their kidneys? Because they're not getting enough. The water element, the nurturing element, is weak. back hurts. Why do you think as they get older, people's backs get more and more painful, more and more stiff? Because they go through life either not getting the resources that they need, or feeling like they don't deserve the resources, or feeling like they're being denied those resources. You want to know power? You want to be a magician? You've got to know all this stuff. So this is what we're going to be talking about here, and I'm going to be giving you, as I already have, but I'm going to be giving you more and more techniques to use with the hands, and how to use the fingers, and how to, what to do with things, how to move in order to stimulate the 5 elements in this particular meridian that goes into the heart center, and tapping into that lightning energy that made the original Maoshan masters so feared in all of Taoism, even to this day. All right, so that's the deal. I'm happy to take questions if you have any. Best way to interact with me is to ask me an honest question. See, now that I've done that, you realize that? I tell you how to best interact with me, because I'm actually helping you to get to that place of vulnerability where you operate from what it is you want and what you feel. When I say honest feelings, the 2 best ways to interact with me is to ask me an honest question, which means that you don't know something and you think I might, so you're asking me for information you think I might have. Or you're sharing an honest feeling. An honest feeling is, when you talked about this, it made me angry, or it made me afraid, or I'm afraid of this, or I'm angry about that. Those are honest feelings. Everything else, I'm just telling you, you're setting yourself up for me to poke holes in your reasoning and to expose your unconsciousness. If you're okay with that, that's what I do here. So, having said that, I'm happy to take any questions. If you have a question, write the word question in all caps, and then ask your question, and you have a better chance of me seeing it. So, let me go and see first all the questions first, then I'll look at any comments. There's not a lot of people on here, I guess. Let's see. All right, so Bandia QR me, and somebody schooled her on how to write a question. She says, how can I find out what his pain and wounds are? I mean, that's kind of what the work is about. You do the Qigong, which I have on this channel. You do the energy work, and then you listen to the emotions as they come up. That is one way. How to find it out? You find it out by doing the work, and that energetically will release wherever the emotions are stored. Meditating with the intention of wanting to know, what is my motivation? What is my intention? What is what is your emotional agenda? What is your emotional agenda? If people knew what their emotional agendas were, they would be much less likely to be deceived. It's when you don't know what your emotional agendas are that people can tap into your emotional agendas and take advantage of you. That's why I made all those videos about politics recently, because that's exactly what's been going on. People are being taken advantage of and manipulated based on their emotional agendas that they're not either aware or honest about. So let's see what else. Bandy RQ question. So how can I find out if the pain or wounds of my innermost is my causes? Am I able to talk directly to it? Yeah, you can do that. That's one way to do it. One thing to do is if you have pain in your body, you can meditate, go into a state of meditation and go ask your pain. Why are you angry? If your knee hurts, you go into your knee and you ask your knee, what do you want? And if you listen, it'll tell you. I have whole things that I teach people in which one of my books. I have my first book teaches you how to do this. And I have it on the channel as well where I talk through the book. The book is called Wealth Shaman. It's the first book that I wrote. And I have exercises in there where you can go in and talk to your poverty, talk to, whatever is negative in your life, you can talk to it and it'll tell you what it is that it wants from you. Because here's what happens. When you are not in alignment with what your soul wants, then you start to get angry. Now, based on how you've been conditioned by your life, the people in your life, usually your parents, based on how you've been conditioned, what happens is everybody's thoughts and feelings are already flowing through them. What they want is already, it's already there. But if you grew up in a home where your mom and your dad didn't want to hear any negative feelings, and you learned really quick that you weren't allowed to have certain feelings, then you started to then beat your parents to the punch by punishing yourself for having a feeling before you even got a chance to feel it. And so you shamed yourself out of it. When you do that enough, the feeling comes up, you shame yourself, you push it down, you go into denial, you feel guilty about it. It happens over and over, and it starts to become unconscious. You're not even consciously aware that you're doing it, but you keep doing it all the time. Then it will create, the emotions build up energy, and they will lodge somewhere in your body sometime. You can also manifest it in your external life. You have poverty in your life. You have abusive relationships in your life. Those are external manifestations of the emotions that aren't getting any attention from you. So there are meditative exercises where you talk to your poverty or you talk to your pain and you say, what do you want? And it'll tell you, but you have to listen. So I gave you that. You can go and watch the videos on Wealth Shaman on my channel, or you can get that book and read it. It's a short little book. She continues, she says, question, does it not hear me when I thank it for the life force it gives of me? Remember we talked about codependence? You're talking about pain or wounds. So that's it's not something outside of you, it's you. So that's like, if you punch yourself in the arm and then you thank your fist for punching it. I thank you for the energy that it doesn't make sense. You think by thanking it that it's going to stop being upset with you. But you're the one that's upset. You're the one that's angry. You're the one that's hurt. But because we're taught many times not to feel our feelings, we separate from it and it becomes something outside of us. I heard back when I was working with cancer patients, a cancer patient was talking about that she would talk to her cancer and say, I love you, but I'd love you more if you weren't here. And my response to that was, your cancer is you. So you just told yourself that you want yourself to disappear. And that part of you is screaming for attention. So you need to do the opposite, not separate yourself and try and love it away, because really saying, I love you, but I'd love you more if you weren't here, you're honestly, forgive my words, you're saying, go fuck yourself. Go fuck you. Fuck off. Get the fuck out of here. And that's not loving. Love says, tell me. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what you feel. I'm ready to feel the worst possible feelings. We have been taught that our feelings will destroy us, and they won't. Our feelings are just energy. They need to be expressed. So saying things like telling your pain or your inner wounds that you're grateful for it, and I'm thank you for your energy. That's like, imagine that somebody saying, hey, I'm trying to tell you something. You're like, no, you don't have to tell me. It's okay. I'm really grateful that you're here. And I really appreciate, I know, but I have something to tell you. No, that's all right. I really love you. And it's a way of guilting yourself out of the feeling. That's what I hear in that. It sounds very spiritual though, doesn't it? Just like, there's either fear or love, and so somebody has this disease and they say to themselves, I'm just going to get into the love, and so they talk to their disease and they say, I love you, but I'd love you more if you weren't here. And there's no desire to actually go and have the really ugly, painful feelings that you were never allowed to have. What else? Lorena Greco question. What is the relation between the heart power you were talking about and following your soul desire? Well, your soul desire... Okay, so the heart power that I'm talking about is again, it's a protective energy. So imagine if somebody didn't have any wounds, either karmic or in this lifetime. Imagine, little kids are a good example. Kids just love everybody, and if something hurts, they cry, and if it makes them happy, they laugh. They're just direct and vulnerable and honest and authentic with their emotions. In fact, they're emotional beings. So they haven't learned how to cut their emotions off or think themselves out of their feelings or any of that stuff, right? So that is one thing. Your soul is something else. Your soul has a specific desire. Now you're going to have all kinds of desires. You have all kinds of human desires which you have to fulfill also. Don't get me wrong. You have to fulfill all your human desires and needs and instincts. But you have a soul desire that goes beyond all of those things. And so what is the difference between that is that what I'm talking about today is I'm talking about gathering and channeling infinite, huge amounts of power for all kinds of purposes. And this is the thing about every spiritual practice is that the end result is to bring consciousness. And like I said, everybody has a carrot that they dangle in front of them. So if you wanted to be like, I trained with African drum shamans. If you were all about music and all about creating through music these portals and spirituality, then the carrot would be, mastering the musical aspect of it and the spiritual connection you get from that. If it's from mantra, if by chanting mantra and perfecting mantra that connects you to the deities, and that's the carrot that's in front of you. No matter what it is, in order to master that art, you have to go through the same process of acknowledging the false assumptions, the false wounds, and to become more vulnerable and let it go. So all of it is designed to get you to do one thing, which is to become conscious. Positive and negative, just being fully conscious of all of your thoughts, feelings, intentions, and then taking direct spiritual constructive action. So the soul is focused on that. The soul is like, I have this thing I want to do, which is what gives me the greatest joy, and it's also my purpose, why I'm here, how I'm going to benefit the universe. And so it doesn't matter if you have the ability to be honest with yourself, you'll be able to know. And again, if you're new to the channel, I've got a book, and I've got videos on this channel. You can search for The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. Read that and or watch the videos, and I tell you exactly what to do. Some people, they get confused, and that's when you get a private session with me. Now, everybody that I've had a private session with who has wanted to know their soul desire or and to do that, you go to career.thunderwizard.com. I got to put up the link that I normally have all the time, but we'll get to that. You go there, scroll to the bottom at career.thunderwizard.com and get a session with me. And there hasn't been a time where I haven't been able to help somebody figure out. They figure it out. I help them figure out what their soul desire is. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to do it, because people have all kinds of blocks and fears and things like that, which can get in the way. At that point, my responsibility starts to dwindle. My responsibility is just to help you figure it out, and then you're the one that has to take action on it. But what does, to answer your question, the connection is that the wounds that you have surrounding your soul, those are the things that we use to protect ourselves. So if somebody is angry, that is a protective mechanism. If somebody's manipulative, that's a protective mechanism. If somebody is a people pleaser, that is a protective mechanism. Those are all ways that you get lodged in the wounds around your heart in order to avoid the pain and the vulnerability that comes from letting go of that and becoming honest and becoming aware. It's a lifetime process. You don't take a pill. The whole idea of whichever the matrix is, the red pill or the blue pill. You take a pill and all of a sudden you're completely conscious. It's not how it works. You got to keep doing the work. But the great thing about the soul desire, which is the most important thing, it's even more important than this powerful magic I'm trying to teach you. But the soul desire is the most important thing because when you become conscious, which will be a flash, you'll become conscious of what it is that gives you the greatest joy. Then your brain and your ego, etc., may come in and try and talk you out of it. And so you have to hold on to what you remember. You felt that inspiration and you realized, oh, I want to be a ballerina. You wake up the next day and the last thing you want to do is be a ballerina. But you remember that you had that experience with your soul, and so you start taking action. You go sign up for ballet classes, and you deal with all of the negative resistance that comes from within you and from outside of you. People, again, will represent your internal resistance. Your family, your friends might want to stop you. Your husband might want to divorce you. It might end up being a real issue where you either go after your soul desire or you end up alone and homeless on the street. Those kinds of things really do happen. And it's you wanting to prove to yourself that you're going to follow the alignment of your soul. So, this whole new agey idea, the secret and whatever, what is Zohar the Magnificent? What does she say? What is that called? The what I'm talking about. Somebody will write it in there. Where you think good thoughts and then good things happen to you. All of that nonsense is designed to talk you out of dealing with the resistance that comes up when you follow your soul. The idea that it'll be easy and if I just follow my dream, it'll all happen. Now that does happen to a lot of people, but those are people who don't have a bunch of wounds that they have to go through. Those are people that don't have histories with codependent, dysfunctional families that talk you out of your happiness and your joy and shame you for all of your feelings. So if somebody grows up in a really healthy, loving home, those are the people who have a lot more opportunities, easy opportunities to just go do what they want because they don't create as much resistance around it. So all the resistance, those of you listening to me who think that the universe has it in for you, those of you who say, I just can't, no matter how hard I try, I just can't seem to succeed. You just can't seem to get financially secure. You just can't seem to find love. The change is to stop thinking about it coming from outside of you and to start acknowledging that you're the one that's creating this resistance based on all this stuff we're talking about. It takes time. This is what counseling is about. This is what being an apprentice with me is about, is working through this. It takes time. I wish I could give you the magic pill. I can give you things that will empower you. I can give you access and techniques that will give you access to huge amounts of power. But as you access that power, the consciousness is going to come up, and it might be challenging to know the difference between what is true and what your ego, your resistance is trying to tell you is real. And what we've just gone through, which was the culmination, this political thing that happened in the United States, that almost completely changed the government. That huge thing was the culmination of this year where people have been forced into isolation. And the fear and the pain and the loneliness and the rage of not being seen, heard, and being able to connect. That's why people don't want to wear, have you noticed the people who don't want to wear masks really violently don't want to wear masks? And if you tell them to wear masks, it's as one woman said, she said, wearing masks is like, being forced to wear masks is like being raped. It's the ultimate silencing. And it represents that you're being told you have to be isolated. You're not going to be seen, heard, loved, experienced. And that's what all that's about. But people aren't aware of that, so it turns into this big political thing. And people, can't tell the difference between what they want and what is real. And they can't differentiate what they want versus what somebody else wants. So they don't even have the ability to cooperate and say, okay, it's okay for you to want that, it's okay for me to want this, and sometimes I will sacrifice and let you get what you want, and then I get what I want. It all just becomes about getting what you want and then changing reality to fit with what you want. Again, like a 4-year-old. When a 4-year-old's not getting what they want, they have a temper tantrum. And I'm not trying to minimize it. There are people who, it is so devastating to feel alone and isolated, unheard, unseen. And this is the culmination. I would even say that COVID is the external manifestation of all of that isolation that's been going on for decades. I mean, I've watched it in my life. It's been getting worse and worse and worse and worse. With the introduction of internet and now social media, people are becoming more and more isolated and more disconnected. And if they already have issues about not being seen, heard, and loved, I mean, think about, when I was a kid, you weren't able to take your kid and stick it in front of a television, because the TV was only on for X amount of hours a day, and there were only so many channels. And so you couldn't do what parents do now, where they stick a kid in front of a laptop or an iPad or something, and they just and they just leave them alone for an hour while they watch something. You couldn't do that. You had to interact with the kid, and then you didn't grow up being completely lost. I mean, the sight of seeing two young people who are obviously together. I sound like such an old fart. Two teenagers who are together and they're hanging out and they're sitting on the bench and they're both on their phone, texting each other. This was 15 years ago. I remember hearing one of my martial arts students, he was in high school, talking about how his friends thought a date, they would go to a girl at school and they would say, do you want to go on a date? And they would say yes. That meant texting each other at 7:00. That was a date. I mean, that kind of isolation is unheard of, and it's just been getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And so COVID comes up, and it's the external manifestation of that experience of isolation and being unseen, unheard, unloved. And within it, there's this immediate payoff of the serotonin that gets released every time you text something or whatever it is you're doing. And so people are going to have to learn how to have these feelings so that they can connect to themselves and to ultimate reality. Okay, I forgot what the question was, but I'm done ranting about whatever it was I was ranting. Waldis Perez, question: why does it feel like my soul respects my ego, even though I know my ego goes out of hand sometimes? Is this a normal thing? So Waldis, I don't know what you mean by ego. Ego is just a Latin word. I mean, I'm throwing the word out, but I'm knowingly throwing it out, just to say what I want to say as fast as I can. But the word ego is far misused. Ego is just Latin and Greek, and it just means I. It means the self. So the ego just means the self. There's nothing negative about your identity. You have to have an identity in order to function. If you didn't have an identity, you would be mentally ill. People with schizophrenia don't have a clear identity. They're sitting next to you and they can't tell if you're driving the car and sitting next to them. They'll say, "Why are you driving so fast?" as the car goes by. They don't understand the idea of a self-contained ego. So, it's not spiritual to deny one's ego. I'm not saying you say that, but a lot of people think that that's spiritual. So you say, why does it feel like my soul respects my ego, even though I know my ego goes out of hand sometimes? I don't know what that means when it goes out of hand. But your soul, of course, respects your ego, because your soul is, in fact, connected to your identity. In Vedic astrology, when you want to see somebody's ego, you look at their sun. The sun is the soul. So your soul is your ego. You have two selves, at least. You have your authentic self, which is your soul, which I call your soul desire. And then you have your conditioned self, which is the the false ego you present to the world in order to fit in and be loved. And the idea is to unify it so that you can have a specific ego. My name is so-and-so, I live here, and yet be in full connection with your true self, which is your soul. So, that's the best answer I have to your question. Why does it feel like that? Because your soul is like saying, stop saying that your ego is bad. Your ego is good. You need to have one. Doesn't mean that you act like an idiot, being an ego. And, the thing is, like we say, for instance, like we say about narcissistic people. We say those narcissists have a big ego. Actually, it's the opposite. The more narcissistic a person is, actually the less of an ego they have, the more frail. In fact, insane people, like, people with narcissistic personality disorder, like serial killers and, cult leaders and things like that, those people actually have no identity. So they create this false identity, which presents itself as being really confident, and not only confident, but I'm the king of the world and I'm better than everybody else. That is actually a defense mechanism against their true experiences, which is that they don't have an ego. They feel completely worthless and unlovable, and that's so intolerable that they create this false firewall personality, which we would look at and say, wow, look at the ego on that guy. But the truth is, he doesn't have an ego. Somebody who has an ego is somebody who, when you yell in their face and you call them names, they go, wow, I mean, that's a really painful thing to hear, but I mean, I still love myself, and I'm sorry that you feel that way. Those are people that have a strong ego. True, like if you want to say somebody has a big ego, that'll be somebody who can sit there and love you and not have your feelings about them affect them at all. And this is what a healthy relationship is. A healthy relationship is when your wife is mad at you, and instead of trying to talk her out of your feelings, you go, I understand. I still love you, and I'm ready to talk whenever you are. So if you need some time, I'll give you some space, and it's okay with me if you're upset, and I'll be here when you're ready to talk. That's the sign of a confident ego. It's not that you like that they're upset with you, but you accept that, and you know that sometimes people just need to have their feelings, and doesn't affect you, and they're not yours. It's called individuation. It's what psychology is all about. Psychology is trying to help everybody become individuated. The reason why people stormed the Capitol is you had thousands of people who were not individuated. They did not have the ability to let other people have different thoughts, feelings, and opinions. The only way they could express their feeling of you're not hearing me is by, smashing windows and end up, with 5 people dead. Let's see. All right, so law of attraction. Yeah, law of attraction, while we're on it, I won't get into it. I've made plenty of videos about it. But, if I loved law of attraction for a long time, it stopped working. But now that I've really found out about the soul desire thing, I've come to the realization that the law of attraction is actually incredibly, incredibly destructive. It's abusive. It creates an abusive relationship between you and the universe. Because think about it. What kind of parent says to their child, listen, until you put a smile on your face, I'm not going to love you. You better get happy right now. You better start loving me right now, because if you don't, I'm not going to give you anything. I'm going to close you and lock you in your room until you learn how to... What good parent does that? A good parent, when the kid comes up and says to mom, I hate you. Mom says, I know. Come here. I still love you. Law of attraction is an angry parent that won't give you anything until you get your feelings together. Until you turn that frown upside down, mister. I'll give you something to cry about. That's the law of attraction. But it's painted up in this really nice, sugary, cotton candy world where, yeah, if you just have good feelings, good things will happen. And if you have bad feelings, then bad things will happen. But people have bad feelings. That's part of being human. It's part of being spiritually mature, is to have pain, anger, sadness, disappointment, and then you mature through it. The universe accepts you exactly as you are. You don't have to have any particular feeling, but you do have to act on the proper assumption. And the proper assumption is that the universe loves me regardless of how I'm feeling right now. And the universe will respond positively to me if I take action based on the idea that I am everything. I am God, and if I go out and live my soul desire, the universe will respond by helping me, by giving me everything I've ever needed. And that has not, going and taking action on your soul desire has nothing to do with how you feel at the moment. It has everything to do with what you assume to be true. It's not even what you believe to be true. It's like, I'm going to assume that if I do this, this will happen. And then you go do it. Because it's hard, you can't be a victim while you're taking action. Victims are people who stop taking action and they start complaining and whining. And they get angry. People who take action, you can't be stopped and whining and complaining about it. You're actually going towards what you want. You can have all kinds of feelings. You can be frustrated. You can be sad. You can even be afraid. You can even be full of doubt. But your actions is what the universe is really most interested in. All right, so to answer your question, law of attraction, somebody asked about that. Okay, Bandia Army Quest. Commental, I'm not sure. All right, so you can comment if you want. Bear in mind that comments, especially if you're trying to get my attention, because I much prefer questions, comments put you in my sights. Because the other thing I'm going to do, I'm just letting you guys know, what I do is as I listen to your unconscious agendas, I listen to what is really going on under the surface, and I reflect it back to you. Some people don't like that. So the safest thing to do is ask a question or share an honest feeling. Even that doesn't guarantee I won't do that either, but let's see. I saw through the lies and was pushed aside by those I loved most, made for now. I know where I stand, no fear at all, but what makes me happy is unknown. No, that's not true. You're not being completely honest. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I'm not denying what you're saying, but not knowing what makes you happy, that's not... It sounds to me like you're putting up a brave front. Let me put it that way. You're putting up a brave front. So you should get some kudos for that. But there's still some denial in there, and there's still, because here's what happens, when we're talking about little kids, right? So when little kids don't get what they want, they try two different approaches. They'll try to appease mom and dad, please, please, please. And then they'll have a temper tantrum. So those are the two extremes. So what ends up happening is people, put up a brave front. But I'm not sure, but you can't be putting up a brave front and know what it is that you want. So in other words, I'm okay, no, I don't have any fear, nothing bothers me, I'm just not happy. And you talk about people lying to you and people pushing you aside, here's the thing. Here's what I'm trying to get at. So you're new to my channel, Bandia, right? All right. So there's only two reasons that we come into this life. The first one is to live our soul desire. So that when you know what your soul desire is and you live that, regardless of you're happy, you're sad, you're poor, you're rich, it doesn't matter. You are now in line with the universe, and the whole universe lines up to help you follow that path. The other thing that you came here for is to work through your karmic issues, which include past life issues as well as present life. Now, the karmic issues that are created in your present life is when you are born. This is true about everybody. We're born into a family. In order to get our needs met, which is our base, everybody's operating from a desire to survive. When we have plenty of food to eat and I can sit here and drink my organic, alcohol-free kombucha ginger beer, and I've got everything I want, it's easy to talk spiritual. But the truth is that everything is based on the desire to survive. It's the most powerful thing that we have, most powerful desire that we have. And so as an infant, in order to survive, you have to be accepted by your family. Because if we're back in, Stone Age times, I mean, people left little kids to die because they've got 2 kids and they can only feed one, and so the newborn's going to have to die. That kind of stuff happened. So we have evolved to make sure that we get our parents' love. Now, if you live in a dysfunctional home, which most homes are dysfunctional to some degree, then you are going to have to deny your thoughts, your feelings, yourself in order to get them to love you. And so what ends up happening when we become adults is that there's a conflict. Everybody has it. The conflict is, do I make others happy or do I follow my soul? And that conflict creates conflict. And if you choose to do what will get you love and approval, which is the most natural physical desire that we have, at the expense of your soul desire, you then create some kind of misery within yourself, whether it's psychological, financial, physical, emotional, spiritual. So what you've described to me, Bandia, is somebody who's in conflict. That the fact that you don't know what makes you happy means that there's a part of you that has been shamed out of what makes you happy. And there was something in your life, family or otherwise, where if you did what you wanted, you got shamed or punished or isolated or neglected. And so the message is, if I want to be loved, I got to do this. In my life, when I was still an adult, my parents, if I wanted my parents' love, I had to be mediocre. I couldn't be too successful. I was supposed to be talented and smart, but I couldn't be successful. If I was successful or gained attention in any way, my parents got really uncomfortable and I got all kinds of weird, shameful messages. So I learned, if I want my parents' love, I have to be unremarkable. Now, that's who I am, is I'm very outspoken. And so in order to follow my true soul desire and what I want, I have to be willing to lose the love of my parents in order to be successful. Now, it sounds really simple when I say it, but the mechanism that we have within us is constantly trying to keep us from becoming conscious of that, because it's a defense mechanism. Because if you become conscious of what it is you really want, and if what you really want means that you're going to lose the love of your family and your friends, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So if what you're telling me is that you have gotten rid of all of those negative external influences like friends and family who get in your way, you still have the internal programming. So after your parents are dead, after people have gone away, you still operate from how you've been programmed. And you go out trying to recreate it with other people. So what you're describing is somebody who is in conflict, that their soul desire and their desire for love and approval is in conflict with itself. And the end result is that's when people don't know what they want. Again, if you go read my book or watch my videos on the Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life, you'll get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. Let's see. Masks are for those who are sick. No, that's not true. Healthy people shouldn't. So anyway, so now I'm seeing a little victim mentality here, Bandia. You want to be seen. You want to be heard. You're buying into that nonsense. No, we know for a fact wearing masks prevents and helps. So again, now you've got, this is why I said it's best not to leave comments, because I'm gonna find something in it. Okay, what else? Raymanovich, question, part 1. So I don't want to come off like I'm asking the same question, which means that you will. Even though I already tried asking this, but could you give like a scale of resistance for where someone who is at the Or to be more specific, could you admit that there is a scale where for someone at the bottom of that scale, it's relatively very easy to follow their soul? Okay, part 3. Experience they follow their soul desire like they don't experience shame or whatever on such a deep level. All right, so Raymond, here's where you go to the two things that I ask. One is you ask an honest question. As you say, you keep asking me the same question over and over again. And I don't know how many different ways I can answer the exact same question. The second thing is you share your feelings. So all of that thinking you're doing, you had to put your question into 3 parts. That's a lot of thinking. Your thinking is you're trying to run away from your feelings. And there really isn't any question, there isn't anything else I can tell you. What you want to give me a scale on, what is it that you want? You want me to tell you, oh yeah, here's the way you can deal with your soul desire and not have to go through resistance. I don't know what your resistance level is going to be. It's different for everybody. And it depends, based on the way you talk to me, it sounds to me like you have a pretty dysfunctional home where, it's not easy for you to be your authentic self because you have to meet other people's demands on you. And so in order to be safe and loved, then you have to do all this wrangling within yourself. And, I don't know what you're asking me for. I get it. You don't want to go through pain. I get it. You don't want to go through resistance. You don't want to feel shame. I get it. I relate. I understand. I can't tell you that it's going to not be there. See what else he has to say. Seriously, there are people who almost follow their soul desire and don't have it that bad, like Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp didn't want to be an actor. How do you know that his soul desire is to be an actor? When you talk to him, he says, I didn't really want this. So, Raymond, you're young, right? You sound young. And you're projecting, and, I don't know what to tell you, man. You obviously feel some resistance, and you obviously don't want to deal with it, and I don't know what to tell you. It's not about, here's what you need to understand. It's not about your feelings. Even though I tell you, you have to have all of your feelings. It's not about your feelings. It's about the actions that you take. So when you know what it is that you want to do, you take actions towards it, and the feelings are going to be whatever they're going to be. The resistance is going to be whatever it's going to be. You're more worried about not being in pain than you are about meeting your soul desire. If you want to understand the concept, go watch videos on YouTube of Arnold Schwarzenegger, giving inspirational speeches. And he says, well, what about, people say to me, well, what if I fail? And he says, of course you're going to fail. I failed far more times than I succeeded. So this is what you're not getting, Raymond. And I don't know how to make it easier for you. You just got to go do it. And you're right. You keep asking me the same question over and over again, and it does sound like the same question. And I don't know how else I can keep saying the same thing. I'm happy to do it, but at some point you got to just start doing what I suggest instead of wanting to talk me out of telling you that it might be challenging. And I don't know, it might be easy for you. Sorry that it's not. I feel for you. It wasn't easy for me. So, Bandia, these are two different things. Again, the other thing that's not a good idea is to double down. With me, doubling down is not a good idea. That makes me want to then, I'm very good at winning these kinds of arguments, especially when it's a one-way thing and I get to do all the talking. So you say, sure, I got no problem with you calling me out, but if we are breathing correctly, stomach full exhale, we rid our body of waste in exchange for oxygen. That's got nothing to do with anything. That is a distraction from the truth. That is called a justification. You're justifying it. What you're not doing is being honest about why you don't want to wear a mask. Because everything you just said has nothing to do with transmitting viruses through your breath or breathing them in. Because that's what we're talking about. You wear a mask so that you don't breathe out the virus, in droplets as you exhale, and you don't breathe it in. So it protects people when you wear it, whether you have it or whether you don't. That's a fact. The Trump administration put a lot of pressure on the CDC to say otherwise. And then when Trump no longer had influence, they turned around and said, no, actually. But the people who don't want to hear that, again, are people who don't like being told what to do. They don't like feeling controlled, and they don't, most of them, my experience is that they feel unheard and they can't stand the idea of being limited in any way. And I'm not saying it's easy, but, you know, so stop bullshitting me. That's not what you want to tell me. Okay, what else? Nothing else there. Raymond says, okay, thank you. So Raymond, instead of asking me how to avoid the pain, why don't you ask me about how to take action and get what you want? That's really the question you should be asking me. So Bandia, you're not hearing me. It's really good not to double down. Let's see. Truth is masks are absolutely useless. So now we're getting to the truth. So you were bullshitting me. And I'm telling you what that tells me is that you've got some unresolved issues. Now I get to go back. This is a bad idea to throw down comments instead of questions. The fact that you don't know what makes you happy, and the fact that you have people that, as you say, were lying to you and who pushed you aside, that tells me a lot. So that tells me that you weren't heard. Tells me that you walk around with a feeling of not being loved and not being seen. A lot of us do. And people who have an intense experience of not being loved, not being seen, not being heard, tend to gravitate towards this kind of rhetoric when it comes to, you know, just wearing a mask to stop the spread of a disease. They turn it into something else, and it becomes about my right to do this and my right to do that. And then they justify it with things that just aren't true. They're useless. They don't do this because if you breathe correctly, like somehow if you're breathing correctly, that somehow that's going to neutralize the virus that you're inhaling and or exhaling. It doesn't make sense. And again, it's an excuse, because what ends up happening is by me telling you you're wrong, by me telling you you have to wear a mask, it's going to stimulate that need in you, which is decades old, depending how old you are, about not being seen and not being heard. And that's why people end up going into department stores and tearing their mask off and saying, it's my right as an American to do whatever the hell I want, and I'm not wearing a mask. And it's this big fucking deal. And they justify it with all of this unscientific stuff. So all you're doing, Bandia, is confirming to me. So let me help you. I know that what's happening right now is you want to pick a fight with me about masks so that you can, once again, re-experience the feeling of not being heard. Because that's not what's happening here. I want to take you back to where you can recover. Remember what we're talking about here. Getting access to that infinite aspect of your soul that is surrounded by this protective thing around your heart, which the wounds, when you weren't heard, when you weren't seen, when you were shamed, whatever happened to you when you were younger, that's lodged in around your heart. And so instead of trying to pick a fight with me about masks, accept that I have a different opinion than you, and it's totally okay for me to have that opinion. Instead of wanting to have that argument with me, focus on the feeling that you have about being told what to do, about having somebody tell you to shut up, put a mask on your face. Go back and remember what it was like to be neglected, shamed, pushed aside, as you put it. That's where the wound is. And then if you can do that and you do the stuff I'm teaching here, and you do the practices, then you'll be able to tap into power. If you can do that while you watch my videos or read the book about how to do your soul desire, you won't have to get off on these sidetracks. You won't have to pull me into them with you. Okay, what else? Anything else here? Raymond Avich, okay, how to take action. What do you mean? I don't even know what it is you want to do. What do you mean, how to take action? You want to be a ballerina? You go take ballet classes. You want to be a boxer? You go take boxing classes. You want to become a doctor? You go to med school. You don't have the money for med school? You go take a job at the service station and you save up money and you apply for a grant, or, you take whatever actions you need to get what you want. What do you mean how to take action? You just do it. And whatever feelings you have, you allow yourself, you lovingly allow yourself to be afraid, to be scared, to feel unworthy, to be afraid that people are going to reject you. You have all those feelings and you still take action every day. You write a list. I want to be a ballerina. Okay, I'm going to call ballet school A, B, C, and D. 2, I'm going to choose one of these schools and start taking the intro to ballet. I'm going to buy ballet shoes. You just make a list and you just do it. It's not rocket science. Just do it. All right. Good. So Bandia, I appreciate you acknowledging that you have inner conflict. That's why you're here. Good. The best thing to do with me is to ask an honest question and share honest feelings. The rest of the time, sit and listen. Sit and listen, even if you don't understand or don't agree. Just sit with it. And if you keep coming back to my channel and you do I've got over 1,000 videos on here. You can listen to me read my own books. You can read my books. If you take action on what I teach, you'll be able to change. You'll be able to get access to that, what it is you really want. But it's not going to happen overnight. It might take a little while. What else? Fim Sampi CG question. In your previous Q&A live stream, you explained the meaning of emotional agenda, but I feel like I still do not get it correctly. Would you mind explaining the meaning of it, please? Emotional agenda is the emotion. Did you hear what I just did? I just told somebody to ask me an honest question or share an honest feeling. The reason I do that is very simply so that people can become aware of what their emotional agendas are. Most people don't know what their emotional agendas are, and that's why people get involved. Again, like if you talk about masks, people want to get into this intellectualized bullshit conversation about nothing. When what they really want to say is, I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being forced to wear this thing. I can't stand it. It reminds me of my abusive stepbrother who used to hold like this. I can't do it. Instead of being honest about their feelings, they go into these intellectual things about, no, you don't understand. If you breathe correctly and you do this, then it's just justification for not talking about your feelings. So an emotional agenda, real simple one. You ask a girl out, you want to sleep with her. You ask a girl out, you want to fall in love with her. You have an emotional agenda. When somebody, here's a good example, an emotional agenda. I have had a friend of mine, I haven't talked to him in a long time, but actually he was one of my students. This had to have been 20, 25 years ago. Long time ago. So this idea of human-caused global warming was just starting to come into the consciousness of society. And I talk about it in my other videos. There was a push against it. The industrialists wanted to debunk it, and so they started creating this rumor that human-caused global warming is a hoax. And so what people were saying then, like the Rush Limbaughs were saying back then, they were saying, global warming hasn't been proven, so we shouldn't do anything about it because we have to wait until it's been proven scientifically. And that was a manipulation of the argument, because the truth is that the scientists were saying, no, the evidence is overwhelming. When a scientist says, there's a 98% chance that this is human caused, what they're saying is it's definitely human. They're just being scientists about it. But when somebody wants to manipulate it, they say, oh yeah, but there's 2% that it's not human caused, and so therefore, right? So I had a friend of mine who said, yeah, they haven't proved it. And I said, and I knew him, and I said, okay, let's cut the bullshit. I know you. So I know when you talk like this that there's something that you want. And I asked him, where are you getting your information? And he, at that time, where people got their right-wing information was on the radio. Rush Limbaugh, places like that, radio shows. As opposed to now people go watch podcasts or YouTube. So he mentioned a couple of right wing, and I said, so you know that that news stream is biased, right? I mean, that's not, that's not coming from the scientists. You know that, right? And I said, I know you well enough to know that there's another reason why you don't want to believe in global warming. I said, so be honest with me and tell me what it is. To his credit, he was honest. And he said, well, I have this 1978 Camaro that I'm rebuilding, and I really love it, and I really want to drive it. And if global warming is proven, or if the government believes that global warming is caused by release of greenhouse gases, I won't be able to drive my 1978 Camaro. And I said, you're serious? And he says, yeah. I said, so your only reason for not choosing to believe it is because you think the government will stop you from driving your favorite car? And he said, yes. To his credit, he was 100% honest. That is an emotional agenda. He could have launched into a false bullshit thing about, why this and why that. And, like somebody did recently, he said, if we stop using, stop using greenhouse gases, or if we stop using petroleum, that it will cripple the world and 1 billion people will die. And I'm like, that is such an intellectual bullshit argument. You're just totally dodging. You're giving yourself the right to say, yeah, maybe it's true, but I'm not going to kill 1 billion people by stop. You know what I mean? And that's somebody who's not being honest about their emotional agenda. Now, the fact is that a lot of people aren't even aware of what their emotional agenda is. This is what I'm talking about. We have to be willing to have the feelings. The first step is to know what feelings we've been shamed out of having. It doesn't happen overnight. This is really great when we have things like finding your soul desire. When somebody says, I don't know what my soul desire is, I go, so we have some unconscious conflict. And then we can work together and find out, yeah, when I was a kid, my parents said this and I couldn't do that and get away with it, and I was shamed out of this feeling. And again, the emotional agenda is to get mom and dad's love. That's everybody's prime motivation in life. Even if your parents are dead, they want mom and dad's love. And they'll, if they're not conscious of what they're doing in order to get mom and dad's love, then they're going to be driven by their unconscious emotional agendas. That's why it's so important to know your feelings. So FimSample CG, watch my videos about critical thinking. Did you do that? I'm pretty sure I told you to do that. Go watch my videos about critical thinking, because critical thinking teaches you how to figure out what your emotional agendas are. And it's what I spend a huge amount of my time on. Whenever I ask myself what I want, because I do it every day, I say, what is it that I want in my life? I listen for what my emotional agendas are. What is it that I really want from, I don't know. But, what is it that I want from, let's say I was trying to become Mr. Olympia. What is it that I want by being Mr. Olympia? There could be so many emotional agendas behind that, more than just being healthy and looking good. Why does somebody want to be president? Why there's an emotional need. When you can get honest with it, it's not going to be rational half the time, but you'll have your feelings and then you'll be able to take conscious action. A56 Cole, what is this? No, Nimzai KIA. Question: when one meditate with practice, can we teleport? That's a much huger question, and short answer is yes. Question is, why are you teleporting? Where are you teleporting? What energy are you using? Short answer is yes. Welcome to the channel. I welcome you to watch more and more and uncover more and more of what it is that I teach. A56 Cold question: could you please elaborate a bit on having the Aruda Lugna in houses 3, 6, or 9? In the interview with Freedom Cole, you said they may have issues with false humility and getting over it. So, in case you're not familiar, I also do astrology. Again, I got to put up all my links again. Astrology.thunderwizard.com. In Vedic astrology, there's this thing called the Aruta Lagna, which means the mount of the self, or the reflection of the self. We walk around through life wanting people to love us for who we are. Unfortunately, nobody does that. People love us for how we present ourselves to the world. Meaning it's not conscious. There is a energy that comes off of everybody that makes you look a certain way. So for instance, my Aruda is the spiritual warrior. So no matter what I'm feeling, whether I like it or not, people are going to experience me as a warrior. If I'm in my highest awareness, they're going to experience me as a protector, the spiritual warrior. If I'm not in my highest awareness, they're going to experience me as, a serial killer. When I in the past, when I would try and show people how I felt, which was, I could get into it, but I'm actually very sensitive and very tender and squishy and all that kind of stuff. But if I walk around like trying to show that, if I walk around like this, then I end up looking, like I'm getting ready to slice somebody's head off. But the thing I don't want to do, because I have a karmic issue about it, is I don't want to puff my chest out and walk around and act like a big tough guy in public, but that's what people expect of me. They're more comfortable when I do that. So that's why when I do this work that I do and I get in people's faces and I tell them you're wrong about this and stop with the bullshit, and even though I have my detractors, the majority of people like it when I do that. It makes them feel safe. So for me, what I was saying to Freedom was that I thought, in my experience, that maybe if somebody's Aruda is in the 3rd, 6th, or the 9th house, that they might have karmic issues that will give them a feeling of conflict with their Aruda. But he very expertly, because he's the guy who got me into astrology to begin with, he very expertly helped me understand that. He said, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he corrected me that the challenge comes if somebody's ascendant lord is opposite. So for me, I have moon in my ascendant. It's not my ascendant lord, but I have moon in the ascendant, which makes me very sensitive and makes me very squishy and all kinds of other things. And that is the opposite of my 3rd house Aruda, which is Mars. So moon and Mars are opposite each other. So that means I'm going to have some conflict about that. So that's the kind of thing you look for. So you look to see, for instance, like if somebody's Leo and their Aruda is Cancer. Let's say they don't have any planets in it. Their ascendant is Leo, but their Aruda is Cancer, which wouldn't be the case. But anyway, let's just assume that is. Those are two completely opposite signs. So that person is going to have conflict. So the point of all it is that you have to, it's just like taking action on your soul desire. You have to show up to the world acting like you're Aruda, even though it's not who you think your true self is. Because that's the role you're supposed to play. So if, let's say, your ascendant is Aries, and then your Aruda has Mars in it. So then you're going to feel totally connected to your Aruda, and you're going to already want to express yourself as a warrior to the world. So that's the thing you look for. I was wrong. Has nothing to do with the house placement. It has everything to do with, is there a conflict between the ascendant and the Aruda? And so you have to look at things like the Lord of the ascendant, and if there are any planets in the ascendant. And then you have to look at the Aruda and see what the Lord of the Aruda is and any planets. So in my case, I vacillate back and forth between liking my Aruda and not liking it, because I have moon in my ascendant, but I'm in Leo. So Leo is a fire sign, and my Aruda is Mars in Libra. So there's a lot of conflict there. So just the Aruda itself has conflict because Mars is in a Venus sign. So Venus is peace and Mars is war. So right there I got conflict. And then you have the Lord of my third house, which is Venus, and then you have the Lord of my ascendant, which is Sun, and that's fire and water, and those guys are fighting with each other. So those are the things you want to look for. The bottom line is, if you know what your Aruda is, regardless of how you feel, no matter how I feel, if I show up as the spiritual warrior and act as a spiritual warrior, people will throw money at me. Same with you. Whatever your Aruda is, no matter how you feel, just go do it. And the idea of getting over the false humility is that you just, same as going after your soul desire. You just take action. It's not about how you feel. You know, when I was an actor, and when I was first starting out as an actor, and I'd go and I'd be on stage and do whatever, and if I didn't feel it, or if I messed up my line or something, and afterwards people would come up and tell me how great I was, and I'd say, no, I totally screwed up. I forgot my line, and they'd be looking at me like, why are you crapping all over me? And I didn't understand that I was being selfish, that my job was to be an actor and just show up and hit my mark and say my line, and the audience is going to have their own experience, because the lights and the costume and the dialogue, and the set, that's going to give them an experience of what's happening. And my job is just to do my job and show up and play my part. And there were times when I did not believe anything that I was saying or feel anything, and people stood up in tears and standing ovation. And there were times when I really felt what I was saying and just crickets. So the point is, it doesn't matter what you feel. Just go be your Aruda. Go do it. And stop worrying about, if you feel it or believe it. Nobody cares. It's about this, the false humility. It's just about being there for other people. All right, what else? Livity Jim, if you got a question, write the word question so that I see it, in case there's a lot more comments. Where do I think the world is heading in the next 10 to 20 years? What would you suggest for a young adult to do to take advantage and or thrive with what is to come? So assumptions are everything. Welcome to my channel. So what you assume will determine your actions and your beliefs. So it's good to have proper assumptions. So you're asking a question with the same assumption that my parents would have tried to give me advice on when I was, in college. And they would have said, in fact, they did say, well, it's great that you want to be an actor, but, you got to be practical, and you should get a second degree so that you have something to fall back on, because, life is tough and you have to work really hard, and it's about making money, and, you got to save and this and that. So very practical advice. You're asking me same kind of a question, as though what's coming in the next 10 to 20 years, what strategy should you have to thrive? And that operates from the assumption that you have to deal with this objective world that's going to do something to you, and you have to know how to interact with it, and all that. Nothing wrong with that question, except that what I share doesn't matter what time period you're in. It doesn't matter if it's 10,000 years ago or 5,000 or 1,000 in the future. The one thing that you need to know is that your soul came here with a desire. If you know what your soul wants to do, you do that. And you do whatever the hell you have to do. If you have to go broke, if you have to live on the street, if you have to move to another country, whatever the hell you have to do what your soul wants to do that. Because when you're following your soul desire, you will be in a bubble of bulletproof protection. Whether you have money or don't have money, it won't matter. So my suggestion for you to thrive with what's to come is the same thing I would tell anybody of any age. Find out what your soul wants to do, and do that with everything that you have, regardless of how you feel. Raymanovich, I know what at least one of my soul desires is, but it's absolutely impossible in this world unless in some parallel four-dimension reality. So Raymanovich, that's not your soul desire. First, because you can't do two things at once. Like, how many beds can you sleep in at any one time? How many cars can you drive at any one time? How many soul desires can you have at any one time? One. So if you think you know what one of them is, and according to you it's impossible unless you live in a parallel fourth dimension, it's not your soul desire, because your soul desire came here to have an experience in 3 dimensions, not in 4. So without knowing everything about what you're saying, again, you could just come out and say what it is, and then I could better help you. And this is why it's good to be honest and, vulnerable. You're asking me the same question over and over again. You ask the question in 3 or 4 parts. You're really intellectual about it. You overthink it. These are ways of running away from your feelings. So I see escapism here. You want to be free of uncomfortable feelings, and now you say one of your soul desires is not possible in 3-dimensional reality. So it's escapism. So what you're trying to escape is the conflict. Conflict is you can either follow your soul desire or you can make your parents happy. Those are your 2 choices. And if you make your soul happy, you're going to have to deal with the rage and the anger and the fear and the sadness and the hurt of not making other people happy. If you don't do your soul desire, and then you're going to do what you're doing now, which is you're going to get trapped in your head trying to talk your way in and out of, whatever. So my suggestion to you is to, again, read the books, watch the videos, get a session with me if you need. Because, very common what you're going through. There's nothing unusual about it. But anyway, I don't see any more questions here. I think we're all done. So, keep your eyes peeled for what's coming. I'm on level 2 now of the 90-day challenge. You can subscribe at any level you want. The 90-day challenge is at the specific level, of course. And if you subscribe to the thunderwizard.com subscription channel, you can get 2 months off. Actually, now we're almost into February, but you can get a discount on that. So go check that out. Raymanovich is throwing me down another question. Let's see if I'm going to roll my eyes at him or not. And Raymond, are you listening to me, or are you going to ask me the same question? Let's find out. Wait, but you said that you had multiple soul desires in this life, living in the woods and surfing, and I think my soul desire is associated with having superpowers. I'm not sure. So are you telling me that? So why do you keep wanting to tell me that it has nothing to do with 3-dimensional reality? Who said having superpowers was something you couldn't do in 3-dimensional reality? I didn't say that. If you're meant to have superpowers, then go get them. Assuming that's your soul desire. I don't know. I mean, the way you talk and the way you, hide behind all of your thinking and your wanting to feel good before you do anything has me thinking that your desire for superpowers is an escape. But bear in mind, I'm somebody who has gone after superpowers, and I've actually had periods of my life where I achieved them. I just found out that they weren't what I wanted, that they didn't make me happy. So, but I wouldn't, the reason that I know all the stuff that I know now and I teach all the stuff I teach now was me searching after achieving immortality and having superpowers. So I'm not going to tell you not to do it. But, Raymond, just stop overthinking things. Just stop. Just stop. You know the answer to all the questions you're asking. You're just avoiding doing it. And I understand. All right, that's it for me, guys. I'll see you all when I see you. Stay safe and keep thinking about having... Raymond. Question. It wasn't clear in your previous videos. Well, just because you weren't clear about it doesn't mean I wasn't clear. It wasn't clear in your previous videos, but can you have unconscious issues with a Ruda Lugna in 10th house? Like I have cancer. I mean, Raymond, did you listen to anything that I said? Did you listen to anything that I said today? Because you already know the answer to that question. I've already told you the answer. I told it in the video. So go back and watch it if you need to. But yeah. You're needing to ask me questions and ask the same question. I get it. But it's time to now just listen and take action on it. Okay? Stop using your crazy monkey brain as an excuse not to just listen and act. Again, not an attack. The best thing I can do is help you. You probably need help. It's very likely, Raymond, that you need a mentor. You need a counselor, a mentor. You're not going to figure this out on your own. You need some help. So I would recommend that you find somebody that you can work with. So you don't have to be in that crazy headspace of always questioning and not understanding and what about this and what about that. You need somebody who can guide you and that will help you get specific. Let's see, what else? Okay, I don't see anything else I need to comment on. All right, that's it for me then. Thanks, guys. I'll see you all, except that I appreciate Guy Home sharing his honest thoughts and experiences. Other than that, that's it. I'm done. Yeah, Raymond, I agree with you. I think you need a therapist. I would recommend you go find one. I have a therapist and a teacher. So it takes one to know one. All right, that's it, guys. I'll see you all when I see you next.